Good evening, everybody. Sean Big Daddy here on a Tuesday night, December 17th. Tonight, I have the honor of having one of my superheroes on the show with me, Mr. Bob Powell. Bob is nothing short of a walking miracle. I will be perfectly honest. March 17th, 2021, his life turned into a nightmare, if you will. But here he is with that wonderful smile. And Bob, I could talk to you for days. My friend, introduce yourself to these folks. Tell them a little bit about yourself before we get into the whole story.
Fantastic, Big Daddy, and thank you. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me
Oh,
to chat about this because obviously everything we do in life has relevance for some reason, right? So roll yourself back. Bob Powell is from upstate New York. That's me. I am a single op. I began my DJ career in 1990. So put your head around that for a moment. That's a long time. And for the first 18 years, I did the same wedding 1,000 times or maybe more. I didn't get much value out of that back then, but I thought I was killing it at the time. And right around 2012, I heard about this convention in Atlantic City, DJX. It was DJ Expo at the time. I want to say back then it was at the Trump Plaza, one of my first ones, if you can remember back that far. You've been to a lot of them. So
we were still at back in 2012, I think we were in the Tropicana for a little bit and then over to the convention center.
correct. I think it was the Tropicana now that I remember. But I remember that's my first time, and some of the people that we saw back then, like Adam Weiss, and others. That Mike Walter was there at that point in time. Mike was there every year, and those people, my gosh, I think my life changed right at that point, and said, I probably don't know as much as I think I do, and maybe there's some other people I could listen to, and that started my journey to want and learn and do more, and be bigger part of the greater DJ community.
As a single op, you have photo booth and DJ, correct?
I do DJ, photo booth. I do karaoke, like you, my friend. I came up and saw you in Connecticut
Yes, sir.
not too long ago, but I do that as well. And that was really the bigger part of my business back in 91. I started karaoke. I was one of the first hosts in the triple cities of New York area where I live. And that really kept me busy 4 or 5 nights a week. But it was just enough money to buy the next laser disc that Pioneer made that were $150 a piece. I'll never forget that.
And 15 pounds a piece.
Yeah, that case of 20 weighed a lot, and I had four of those cases. And then I found out about CD and G because, from my standpoint, then there was less of a load, right? More CDs to carry if you got CD and G, but the people missed out on that MTV style video.
Yeah.
But they had the words, which was the most important thing, and eventually it became the most important thing.
Right. Right. So where's the Tri-Cities? Where are you in New York State?
I'm on the border of Pennsylvania here in Owego, New York. And so if you go 20 miles to my east, you're in Binghamton. If you go 50 miles to my west, you're in Corning. If you go 70 miles to the north, you're in Syracuse.
Wow. Okay.
And if you go south 60 miles, you're in Scranton.
Okay. So you're right in the middle of a little bit of everything.
And right near Route 17 and 81,
Okay.
major areas. And Binghamton Airport's not good, but there's an airport in Binghamton.
So 2012, you decided to up your game, if you will. And you mentioned a few names, and the circle, the family circle. Let's go on to the story that I was talking about in the beginning. And if you'd like, you can show some. I'd like you to show those pictures. My friends, Bob, in March 17th of 2021, went into the hospital with COVID. And how many days later was it, Bob?
57 days on a ventilator.
On a ventilator and induced coma, correct?
Correct.
57 days, my friends. And look at this man. And let's chat. We'll go to the pictures later. Let's chat about being a single op and on a ventilator and everything else. What network did you give me some people? Give me the people that got you through this as a single up because you couldn't do anything, and your wife really had, she had nothing to go on. What was the turning point there as far as that goes?
That's a great discussion. So I ventured into DJ Event Planner right around 2015 or 16, I want to say. I have an office in my basement that I operate out of. I had all my client information on my DJ Event Planner system. And so I had all the clients and everything was on my system the way I used it, not the way anybody else would use it.
Right.
And fortunately, how this all came about, and you talk about the circle of people, at the time I was in the DJ MC Toastmasters group. We had friends like Vicky Musti, Mitch Taylor was in that group. Steve Bowen from Australia, you might know Steve,
Oh yeah, Steve's a
was
good
in that
boy.
group. Thomas Heath was in that group. Lucas Hendrick visited us a few times in the group. Just those folks that we all know and love in our industry that have taught us a lot about how to, be better at what we do. But the Toastmasters group, that's how my wife actually got engaged in what happened because Vicky Musney was calling me in March because officer elections was going to be happening in April. And she was calling to ask me if I wanted to be the president of the DGMC Toastmasters group back in 2021 after being in the group and being a vice president of education and doing other office board positions on the in the group. And she was calling me and she got really frustrated because I'm really responsive. And like a week went by, 2 weeks went by, and she didn't know what was going on because Bob never not responds. He's
Right.
always responsive.
Yep.
So at that point, she reached out on Facebook to my wife and she said, "Can you help me out? I can't get a hold of Bob." And she was one of the first people to actually talk to my wife and say, my wife said, "I don't know what to do. Bob is in the hospital. He's not responsive. We can't visit him because of the COVID restrictions. He's got COVID and they've induced him into a coma. And I know he's got business things going on. I don't know much about it." And that's when my daughter went down to my work center downstairs and I was signed on and that began the process.
Thank
So
God.
thank goodness for a business process, right? Doesn't matter how you have one, right?
Right.
Have one. And from there, Vicky and Mitch and others reached out and began to call people in my local market. I mentioned Ryan DeLapp. I mentioned DJ Toby in my area, Chris Washburn, another person, as well as Mitch and probably Mike Napoli and a few others. But
Adam
essentially,
Conway. I got in touch with Adam Conway because I know he was semi close in that area. Todd Mufford, everything else. Yeah, it was a tough. Oof.
but to the point, no one knew if and when Bob was going to wake up. So that was, and I shouldn't say but no one knows like I know.
And then you woke up when?
I woke up on May 14th was when I actually first day I remembered after probably the 18th of March or so.
57 days.
And most of those days with the ventilator down. I was told, I did remember, I did have a couple of memories. One memory I had was being rushed to a CT. Didn't know when that was. They filled in the blanks later on. Apparently on Easter Sunday. My numbers were up high enough. They took the ventilator out. I woke up for a brief minute and they thought I was having a stroke. So they rushed me to the CT to check to see if I had a stroke, which I didn't, fortunately.
Oof.
And on Easter Sunday, they couldn't get any doctors to perform a tracheostomy, which was what I needed. And by Monday, I went back on the ventilator. So I may have been minus a day or two within that 57, but that was it. It was
So you're
crazy.
You're out of the ventilator. You're up. You're you're relearning how to walk, talk, everything, correct? Show some of those pictures if you would.
Yeah, I could share. And again, to some that might be sensitive, this is, fairly, I'll say fairly graphic because you have to understand what was going on at the time. So
Mm-hmm.
so this was a screenshot that I had taken when I was at the hospital telling my wife that they were going to admit me. When I went to the hospital, I had no idea what the diagnosis was, but I said they diagnosed me with COVID and they're going to admit me. And about a week later, my daughter shared this screenshot. And for all that are watching and looking at this, this was when they induced the coma. And the only way my family could communicate with me was for the nurses to hold an iPad near the bed so that my wife and daughters could talk to me. And they said that every time they did that, and they did this every day, every time they did this, my numbers would get a little better. But the numbers were horrible.
Mm-hmm.
When I say horrible, this is a couple weeks later. This is right around the end of March. And this was at least one of the times out of the three times that there was a priest in my room with my family giving me last rites. I was told in my wife's diary this happened three times. And I'm like, wow, this is really unbelievable. But when you say unbelievable, what's more unbelievable about it is that I had the doctor that admitted me was my next door neighbor who worked at Guthrie's emergency room, Jim Raftis. And Mike Murphy was a good doctor friend of mine as well. And those gentlemen were very persistent with my care team and said, you are pumping this guy's, you've induced a coma, you're pumping this guy full of fluids and everything else, and yet his liver, his kidney, and his heart are withstanding this abuse that you're sending into his body to keep him alive. I think this guy needs a chance. And fortunate for me, they kept on him, and they were palliative care was talking to my wife and says, hey, if Bob even can come home, it's going to be very difficult. He's not going to be able to walk. He's going to have, probably brain damage and other issues. And they were talking about palliative care. Imagine that.
Oh,
My wife and daughters and my family, right? However, by the good graces of the Lord above, this is a picture of me on May 25th, and this was actually about 11 days after I regained consciousness. I was very close on May 14th. They had to transfer me to a rehab facility. That had to happen. And I was within an hour of being transferred down to Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, which was going to be over 3 hours away from my home. Within an hour of that decision, my numbers just came up just barely enough to be able to send me to another Guthrie facility in Troy, Pennsylvania,
shoo.
which was only an hour away from my house. And when I got to Troy, my wife and family, my wife was there every day. My family visited me very often and got to witness some very huge milestones. One of them being was learning to walk again, because the first time I had a chance to walk was right after Memorial Day, right after that May 25th video, because they needed to take the tracheotomy to allow me to walk. And I'll never forget that because I had two physical therapists and four nurses aides or orderlies in my room that first day. They said, we're going to let you stand today, Bob. We're going to let you stand. And I had all this stuff, and every time I moved, my oxygen would drop down in the low 80s, like instantly. It was unbelievable. It took me 50 minutes to be able to stand for 50 seconds.
Oh,
I I cried my eyes out. I was so upset and I thought it was a total failure. And my physical therapist, Jim, put his arm on my shoulder. He said, Bob, we were just here to make sure you didn't fall. You flexed your hips. You stood yourself. You stood yourself. Do you understand what you just did? And I thought I had failed. And he said, for you to go home, what do we need for you? Because they said, this is May. You're going to be here till September. What do you need? I said, my house. Getting in my house, I have 13 steps to the first floor and 13 steps to my bedroom. So he goes, so 26 steps, right? That's what we need. I said, I need 26 steps. And this was on June 21st when I took my first steps. I started the room with a walker, had, bragging about 10 steps, bragging about 100 steps, bragging about 400 steps. And then we had to learn how to do steps, which was amazing. My therapists were amazing. So that was the role. And I don't have a picture of it. I wish I did. But I was able to come home on July the 8th of 2021. I spent just 50 days in rehab instead of 120.
Nice.
And when I arrived at my house, my wife and I got there. My brothers were right behind me. However, by the time they got to the house, I had managed all those 13 steps to the first floor with my eyes
Nice.
on. And it was kind of amazing. Because they got there and I was already up, and Mary Beth said to my brothers, he's up on the first floor already. Just amazing. And, what can I say?
My friend, being a part of that journey was, oh my, I can't even. But know this, you are a superhero each and every day. But I have a question. Once you got yourself acclimated and back in, what was it? What was the driving force that said, okay, I'm ready to do the next steps? Being your business, now that you've gotten pretty much all of your stuff covered, everything else, what was the thing inside of you or the people around you that got you to go to the next level?
Well, I'll start first with one speed bump, right? I began doing events as early as October.
I
Even though
remember.
the doctor didn't want me to do things, I had help and I was going to go. The driving force was everybody I met at these conferences. And I started going to many conferences, not just one. DJ
Mm-hmm.
Expo was one of them, right? One that was very close to my heart was Midwest DJs Live in Milwaukee. This is where I met Mitch and that whole team out there, Rich Lang and others that we all know very well in the industry. And I was so motivated after, doing DJX, going to Mex, back when it was back in Vegas,
Mobile Beat.
when it used to
Mobile
be
Beat.
Mobile Beat way back in the day. I mean, got to see, Randy Bartlett's last ever presentation and, others that we had Vanilla Ice that year that we were there. But all those guys had led me to the path that said, hey, you need to be educated on all levels, right? And education is something you never really arrive at. So the turning point was all those experiences that I had, and just the pure factor that tomorrow's not promised, right? I was fully inspired not just to be better, but to explore more opportunities and do more charity events. I took a Marbecca workshop back in 2019, helped me improve my speaking skills. I've done several of them, and I'll do more. Went and saw Bill Herman's entertainment experience too. Worked with Bill. These are all people in our industry that shape us they don't try and make us them. They try and shape us into the performers that we are and give us the tools and the recognition to be better at it and try and, like I said, level up, be above others, not in the sense of, but be the best version of yourself. Those are the inspirations and reminding you all along the way, even the best of the best everywhere, get coaching. And coaching comes in a lot of ways. You can do the one-on-ones and go to the different go to Marbeck and go to entertainment experience. But the networking and discussions you have at these conferences, they're priceless. The people I know from across the country, if you can imagine, in my Toastmasters club, I became really good friends with Steve Bowen in Australia. Back
Steve's a
in
good man.
back in 2019, Steve calls me up and says, Bob, I have a Australian groom that's getting married in Plymouth, Massachusetts. How far away are you from Plymouth? I says, well, I'm 4 or 5 hours. He goes, they want to have me as the entertainer. Would you be my assistant? Can you come to Massachusetts and collaborate with me for this wedding? And of course, what do you think I said? This is pre all this other stuff. I said, I'm in. I want to see you in action. I want to see what you do. He goes, and I want to see what you do, Bob. And to this day, we're great friends. We spend, 3 days together in Boston or Plymouth, Massachusetts area, and we rocked the wedding like crazy. And we still, to this day, communicate all the time. I owe a trip to Australia. I want to get there. I would love to. But this is the collaboration. This is the kind of relationships almost accidentally that you create. And the friends, and it's a big family. When you do your family party in DJX every year, it's the same thing, right? This is our family. And we need to be treating this like a family. Because when the chips are down, they're the ones that come through.
Amen. And a man that drives 3.5 hours to come hang out with me for 45 minutes or maybe a little over an hour and turns right around and goes home. My friends out there, this man is my family and will always be my family. This man has a heart of gold, and everything that you heard is true. The pictures, everything else that this man has been through. What's next for Bob Powell?
What's next for Bob Powell? It's going to be continuing my education for sure. I'm quite honored to become the Vice President of Education at Midwest DJs Live, a show that I've been an ambassador for 5, 6 years. I want you there. But the opportunity to be part of something bigger in the industry, this show is certainly, I would say, family. It's very family oriented.
Big time.
It's not the 3,000 person Atlantic City. Let's stay out all night and party, and then we'll go to some education if we want to. I love the seminars because some of my favorite people speak there all the time. Not everybody takes it for what it's worth. Those things are being missed if you're not there. If you're not there with the guys when they're doing the game seminar, and you're not there for Mike Walter when he speaks, you should be. That's my message for the conventions. If you go to learn something, go to hear other people's perspective, go to round yourself. Whether you take it all and use it, that's your business. But you can always find something better. Because Randy always said, what did Randy preach for years? The 1% solution. Whatever you're doing, if you think about it this way, do it 1% better. What can make that 1% better?
Amen.
And that's what we should all be looking at.
Bob, how can people get a hold of you on whatever? Anywhere.
Well, on Instagram, I'm DJ Bob Powell. I'm Bob Powell Entertainment on Facebook. I am DJ Bob Powell also, I think, on TikTok. And you can see some of my karaoke antics and some of the other things I post up there. But, feel free to check my stuff out. Follow me around. I put my pants on one leg at a time. I go to work just like we all do. Right? And I'm just one of the community. And I'm a resource for almost anything anybody would like to share or need from me. I'm glad to help.
My friends, this man right here is a special man. He is what this world needs more of. He is a man with a true sense of everything. After everything he's been through, look at him. And I am honored to call him my friend and my brother. Bob, I want you and your family to have the most amazing Christmas. 2025, we kick butt, my brother. My friends out there, Bob, say goodbye to my friends.
I'll say goodbye, but I'll also say one extra thing. Make sure in your business that somebody else knows something, whether it's a spouse, a confidant, or a friend, and even in your life. Make sure if you got a girlfriend, spouse, friend, make sure they know. Because the honest truth is, I didn't share that stuff with my wife. She needed to know more than she does. We have a book now, and that
And
book has everything you need in case
something else
tomorrow's not
happens.
here. So just keep that as advice. And Big Daddy, you know I love you.
I love you too, babe.
And thank you for having me on. I hope I helped a few people along the way tonight.
Oh, I'm sure you did, my friend. Well, my friends, happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy New Year 2025. We kick some behind. John Young, again, one more thing. Tomorrow is John Young's birthday, and I'm going to start finishing my show by happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, brother John. Big Daddy loves you. Happy birthday to you. John, happy birthday. Bob Powell, you were an inspiration and a Superman, and I love you, my brother. Have a great night, everybody.
See you soon.